The Russian Air Force is the aerial warfare service branch of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation. It is currently under the command of Lieutenant General Viktor Bondarev. The Russian Navy has its own air arm, the Russian Naval Aviation, which is the former Soviet Aviatsiya Voyenno-Morskogo Flota, or AVMF. The Air Force was formed from parts of the former Soviet Air Forces after the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991–92. Boris Yeltsin's creation of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation on May 7, 1992, can be taken as a convenient formation date for the new Air Force. Since that time, the Air Force has suffered severe setbacks due to lack of resources, and has constantly shrunk in size. Since Vladimir Putin became president of the Russian Federation, however, much more money has been allocated to the armed forces as a whole. History: following the dissolution of the Soviet Union into its 15 constituent republics in December 1991, the aircraft and personnel of the Soviet Air Forces the VVS were divided among the newly independent states. General Pyotr Denikin, the former deputy commander-in-chief of the Soviet Air Forces, became the first commander of the new organization on August 24, 1991. Russia received the majority of the most modern fighters and 65% of the manpower. The major commands of the former Soviet VVS are the long-range aviation, military transport aviation and frontal aviation were renamed, with few changes, Russian VVS commands. However, many regiments, aircraft, and personnel were claimed by the republics they were based in, forming the core of the new republic's air forces. Some aircraft in Belarus and Ukraine were returned to Russia, sometimes in return for debt reductions, as well as a long-range aviation division based at Toulon in Kazakhstan. During the 1990s, the financial stringency felt throughout the armed forces made its mark on the air forces as well. Pilots and other personnel could sometimes not get their wages for months, and on occasion resorted to desperate measures. 4 MiG-31 pilots at Yeltsin in the Far East went on hunger strike in 1996 to demand back pay, which was several months overdue, and the problem was only resolved by diverting unit monies intended for other tasks. As a result of the cutbacks, infrastructure became degraded as well, and in 1998, 40% of military airfields needed repair. The situation only began to improve after Putin took power and military budgets were greatly increased. The VVS participated in the First Chechen War and the Second Chechen War. These campaigns also presented significant difficulties for the VVS, including the terrain, lack of significant fixed targets and insurgents armed with Stinger and Shlat-2M surface-to-air missiles. During the 1990s the Sukhoi Design Bureau designed a replacement bomber aircraft, the T-60S. This aircraft did not reach the production stage. A further abortive design project was the MiG-1.42. The former Soviet Air Defense Forces remained independent for several years under Russian control, only merging with the Air Forces in 1998. The decree merging the two forces was issued by President Boris Yeltsin on July 16, 1997. During 1998 altogether 580 units and formations were disbanded, 134 reorganized, and over 600 given a new jurisdiction. The redistribution of forces affected 95% of aircraft, 98% of helicopters, 93% of anti-aircraft missile complexes, 95% of the equipment of radio-technical troops, 100% of anti-aircraft missiles and over 60% of aviation armament. More than 600,000 tons of material changed location and 3,500 aircraft changed airfields. Military transport aviation planes took more than 40,000 families to new residence areas. The short-lived operational commands were abolished. 2 air armies, 37th Air Army and 61st Air Army, were established directly under the Supreme Command. The former frontal aviation and anti-aircraft forces were organized as Air Force armies and anti-aircraft defense armies under the military district commanders. There were initially 4 such armies with headquarters in St. Petersburg, Rostov-on-Don, Khabarovsk, and Kita. 2 military districts had separate air and air defense corps. When the Transbaikal Military District and Siberian Military District were merged, the 14th Air Army was reactivated to serve as the Air Force formation in the area. The number of servicemen in the Air Force was reduced to about 185,000 from the former combined number of 318,000. 123,500 positions were abolished, including almost 1,000 colonel positions. The resignation of 3,000 other servicemen included 46 generals, of which 15 were colonel generals. On December 29, 1998, Colonel General Anatoly Kornukov, a former Air Defense Forces officer and new commander-in-chief of the merged force, succeeding Denikin, reported to the Russian defense minister that the task had in principle been achieved. General Kornukov established the new headquarters of the force in Zya, near Balashikha, 20 km east of the center of Moscow, in the former PVO Central Command Post, where the CIS Common Air Defense System is directed from. Since 2000, General Kornukov was succeeded by General Vladimir Mikhailov in 2002. In December 2003, the aviation assets of the Army mostly helicopters were transferred to the VVS, following the shooting down of a Mil-26 helicopter in Chechnya on August 19, 2002, that claimed 19 lives. The former Army aviation was in its previous form intended for the direct support of the ground forces, by providing their tactical air support, conducting tactical aerial reconnaissance, transporting airborne troops, providing fire support of their actions, electronic warfare, setting of minefield barriers and other tasks. The former Army aviation is now managed by the Chief of the Department of Army Aviation, who in mid-2007 was Lieutenant General Anatoly Sertsikov. In October 2004, the disbandment was announced of the 200th and 444th Bomber Aviation Regiments with Tupolev Tu-22 M3, of the 28th, 159th, 790th, and 941st Fighter Aviation Regiments, of the 302nd and 959th Regiments equipped with Sukhoi Su-24, and of the 187th and 461st Assault Aviation Regiments with the Sukhoi Su-25. These disbandments did not go ahead. The Air Force continues to suffer from a lack of resources for pilot training. In the 1990s, Russian pilots achieved approximately 10% of the flight hours of the United States Air Force. The 2007 edition of the International Institute for Strategic Studies Military Balance listed pilots of tactical aviation flying 25 hours a year, 61st Air Army pilots, 60 hours a year, and Army aviation under VVS control 55 hours a year. General Mikhailov was succeeded by General Colonel Alexander Zlin in 2007. Zlin said in August 2007 that by 2011 the Air Force would deploy advanced unmanned aerial vehicles with flight range of up to 400 kilometers and flight duration of up to 12 hours. The UAVs of both fixed and rotary wing types will perform a variety of tasks, including reconnaissance, attack, retransmission of radio signals and target designation, he said. In August 2007, the commander of the 16th Air Army, General Major Alexander Belovich, said that the 16th Air Army would soon receive 2 regiments of the advanced Su-34 fullback fighter bombers in the near future. However, as of 2010, only 16 Su-34s are in service, and only one frontline unit has received any aircraft. Belovich also said the formation would receive MiG-29 SM Fulcrum fighters to replace outdated MiG-29s and modernized Su-25 Frogfoot close support aircraft, which showed outstanding performance during operations in Afghanistan, Chechnya and other hotspots. Russia resumed the Soviet-era practice of sending its bomber aircraft on long-range flights at a permanent basis in July and August 2007, after a 15-year unilateral suspension due to fuel costs and other economic difficulties after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Patrols towards the North Pole, the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean were reinstated, bringing the planes often close to NATO territory, most recently flying over the Irish Sea, between the UK and Ireland. In 2008 the Air Force lost between 4 and 7 aircraft to Georgian anti-aircraft fire during the 2008 South Ossetian War. Warfare.ru indicates that in early 2009 the Air Force went through a major restructuring, in which air armies were succeeded by commands, and most air regiments becoming air bases. However, combat aircraft, in a piece by Stefan Butner in its Augusta-September 2009 issue, presented the order of battle as being substantially unchanged. Eventually Aviation Week and Space Technology confirmed that the reorganization would be completed by December 2009 and would see a 40% reduction in aircrew numbers. In February 2009, the Russian newspaper Kommersant reported that 200 of the 291 MiG-29s currently in service across all Russian air arms were unsafe and would have to be permanently grounded. This action would remove from service about a third of Russia's total fighter force, some 650 aircraft. On June 5, 2009, the Chief of the General Staff, Nikolai Makarov, said to the Russian Air Force that they can run bombing missions only in daytime with the sun shining, but they miss their targets anyway. Major General Pavel Andrusov said that Russia's long-range bombers would be upgraded in 2009 with the aim of being able to hit within 20 meters of their targets. On August 18, 2009, the Russian government signed a contract for 48 Su-35BM, 4 Su-30M2 and 12 Su-27SMs at the MAKS 2009 Air Show. Also in September 2009 it was reported that an East European network of the joint CIS air defense system was to be set up by Russia and Belarus. This network was to be established to jointly protect the Russia-Belarus Union State unregistered trademark S airspace. Its planned composition was to include 5 Air Force units, 10 anti-aircraft units, 5 technical service and support units and 1 electronic warfare unit. It was to be placed under the command of a Russian or Belarusian Air Force or Air Defense Force senior commander. A number of Russian aviation companies have been attempting to develop advanced fighter aircraft to replace the large number of aging MiG-29 and Su-27 aircraft in service. All have been severely affected by funding difficulties. Sukhoi has emerged as the frontrunner. The Sukhoi PAK-FA Euro Future Air Complex for Tactical Air Forces Euro has been under development since 2002. The first prototype made its initial flight on January 29, 2010. A 2015 date has been announced for service entry. There has recently been discussion over changing the Soviet Red Star insignia on aircraft. In March 2010, a new roundel was proposed in the State Duma, adding an outline of blue, to reflect all 3 colors of the national flag. While this proposal was rejected in the Federation Council, pictures exist showing some aircraft have had the 3-color insignia applied. In July 2010, Russian jet fighters made the first non-stop flights from European Russia to the Russian Far East. By August 2010, according to the Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Air Force Alex Sanslin, the average flight hours of a pilot in Russian tactical aviation had reached 80 hours a year, while in Army aviation and military transport aviation it exceeded 100 hours a year. As of August 15, 2010, the Russian Air Force temporarily grounded its fleet of Su-25 ground attack aircraft to conduct an investigation into a crash that happened during a training mission. The Russian Defense Ministry said that the plane crashed on August 6, 2010, 60 km to the northwest of Steppe Air Base in Siberia, according to RIA Novosti. The plane is in the process of being upgraded by the Russian Air Force. The crew of the plane ejected to safety before it hit the ground and there were no civilian injuries. In 2010, the 2003 decision to transfer the Army aviation to the Air Force was reversed. Also, 18 new aviation brigades will be created. Since 2012. Currently the Russian Air Force operates a total of 61 air bases. This includes 26 air bases with tactical aircraft, of which 14 are equipped with fighter aircraft. In 2012, the Air Force was made up of 38 fighter squadrons, 7 operating MiG-29s, 1 operating the MiG-29S, 2 operating the MiG-29SMT, 10 operating the MiG-31, 1 operating the MiG-31B, 1 operating the MiG-31BM, 7 operating the Su-27P, 8 operating the Su-27SM, 1 operating the Su-27SM3 and Su-30M2, 15 bomber squadrons, 14 assault squadrons, 9 intelligence squadrons, 13 training and test bed squadrons. In terms of flight hours, pilots in the Western Military District averaged 125 hours over the 2012 training year. Pilots from the Kursk Air Base achieved an average of 150 hours, with transport aviation averaging 170 hours. Ranks and insignia. The independent Russia inherited the ranks of the Soviet Union, although the insignia and uniform was altered a little, especially the reintroduction of the old Tsarist crown and double-headed eagle. The Russian Air Force is an independent organization. The Russian Air Force follows the same rank structure as the Russian ground forces, with the addition of the title of aviation to each officer's rank. Organization. In 2009 the Russian Air Force's structure was completely changed to a command air base structure from the previous structure of Air Army Air Division or Corps Air Regiment. The VVS is now divided to 4 operational commands: the Operational Strategic Command for Airspace Defense, the Military Transport Aviation Command, and the Long Range Aviation Command. This listing is a composite. The available new information covers frontline forces, and the forces of central subordination as of approximately August 2008. Warfare maintains what appears to be a reasonably up-to-date listing, and Combat Aircraft magazine in June 2010 listed their organization's estimate of the new order of battle. Operational Strategic Command for Airspace Defense, 4th Airspace Defense Brigade, 5th Airspace Defense Brigade, 6th Airspace Defense Brigade, former 32nd Corps of PVO, 6963rd Aviation Base, 6968th Fighter Aviation Base. 1st Air and Air Defense Forces Commander Euro, 1st Airspace Defense Brigade, 2nd Airspace Defense Brigade, 6961st Aviation Base, 6964th Aviation Base, 6965th Aviation Base, 7000th Aviation Base. 2nd Air and Air Defense Forces Command, 8th Airspace Defense Brigade, 9th Airspace Defense Brigade, 10th Airspace Defense Brigade, 6977th Aviation Base, 6979th Aviation Base, 6980th Aviation Base, 6982nd Aviation Base. 3rd Air and Air Defense Forces Command, 11th Airspace Defense Brigade, 12th Airspace Defense Brigade, 6983rd Aviation Base, 6987th Aviation Base, 6988th Aviation Base, 6989th Aviation Base, 265th Transport Aviation Base. 4th Air and Air Defense Forces Commander Euro Southern Military District, Rostov-on-Don, 7th Airspace Defense Brigade, 8th Airspace Defense Brigade, 6970th Aviation Base, 6971st Aviation Base, 6972nd Aviation Base, 6974th Aviation Base, 999th Aviation Base, 229th Transport Aviation Base, Mi-8AMTSH, TM. Military Transport Aviation Command, 6955th Aviation Base, 6956th Aviation Base, 6958th Aviation Base, 6985th Aviation Base. Long Range Aviation Command, 6950th Aviation Base, former 22nd Guards Heavy Bomber Aviation Division, 6952nd Aviation Base, 6953rd Aviation Base, located at Srednyru, th Euro th Micron th 1/2 th to the 1st, Irkutsk Oblast. Forces of Central Subordination of the Russian Air Force 2008 8th Air Division for Special Purposes a Euro Kholovsky Airport, 929th State Flight Test Center a Euro Okhtobinsk 4th Center for Combat Training and Flight Personnel Training a Euro Lipetsk Air Base, Su-34, Su-24M2, Su-30, Su-27SM, MiG-29, L-39C, 344th Center for Combat Training and Flight Personnel Training a Euro Tizhok a Euro Ground Forces Helicopters. 696th Research and Instruction Helicopter Regiment a Euro Tizhok a Euro Kar-50, Kar-52, Mi-35M, Mi-8AMTSH, Mi-24PN, Mi-26, has used Mi-28N, 92nd Research and Instruction Helicopter Squadron so-called Vladimir Mi-8TM, MTV-5, and Mi-24PN. 2881st Reserve Helicopter Base Totskoye Mi-24P, 924th Center for Combat Training and Flight Personnel Training Yegorevska UAVs, Russian State Scientific Research Institute Center for Cosmonaut Training Star City, 2457th Air Base of Long-Range Radiolocation Detection Aircraft Ivanovo-70 A50, U. 1st Fighter Bomber Aviation Regiment Lyubazhil Su-24, 764th Fighter Aviation Regiment Bolshoi Savino Airport MiG-31 and MiG-25 PU, 5th Independent Long-Range Reconnaissance Aviation Detachment Voronezh 185th Center for Combat Training and Flight Personnel Training Astrakhan, 118th Independent Helicopter Squadron Chebenki, Miteva, Orenburg Oblast. 4020th Base for Reserve Aircraft Lipetsk, 4215th Base for Reserve Aircraft Chebenki, 15th Army Aviation Brigade of the Western Military District at the Airport Ostrov, PSKOV Oblast, Training Units, Krasnodar Military Aviation Institute L-39C, Syzran Military Aviation Institute Syzran Mi-2, Mi-8T and Mi-24V, and ZAT, Kar-226T, 783rd Training Center Armavir MiG-29UB and L-39C, 786th Training Center. Borisovlebsk, Yak-130, the list of Soviet Air Force bases shows a number which are still active with the Russian Air Force. Equipment. The following data is collected from open sources and may contain significant inaccuracies. The precise quantitative and qualitative composition of the Russian Air Force is unknown and the figures below include both serviceable and unserviceable aircraft as well as those placed into storage or sitting in reserve. According to the instructions of the General Staff of the Armed Forces in September 1, 2011, the unmanned aircraft of the UAF and the personnel operating them moved under the command structure of the Russian ground forces. Therefore, the Army has overall control over the unmanned aircraft of the UAF. According to the International Institute for Strategic Studies, UAF pilots average 80 to 100 flight hours per year. Aircraft inventory, future of the Russian Air Force, future aircraft, aircraft deliveries by type 2009 onwards, see also, awards and decorations of the Russian Federation, honorary titles of the Russian Federation, list of Russian aviators. References 101 http, Stella known as RU 44256/102 http, Stella known as RU 43309/. Further reading, Hyam, Robin. Russian Aviation and Air Power in the 20th Century. Routledge, 1998. ISBN 0-7146-4784-5, Palmer, Scott W. Dictatorship of the Air, Aviation Culture and the Fate of Modern Russia. New York, Cambridge University Press, 2006. ISBN 0-521-85957-3, external links, Russian Air Force Unofficial, Commerçant Vlast, State of Russia's Air Forces 2008 No. 33 August 25, 2008. VVS Order of Battle courtesy of Scramble NL, Russian language VVS site, photos Russian Air Force, Russian Military Aviation, Russian Revival Russia's technological strategy for post-2010 air power.